So I reviewed Repulsion recently, and I knew that I probably wasn't going to be able to get away with that without angering at least a couple of people, because obviously Roman Polanski is quite notorious. Rape allegations of a minor were made against him back in the 1970s, and he was even pretty much exiled from the United States. He hasn't set foot on our soil in years. And I got into a couple of friendly arguments with some viewers on this topic, and I thought it would make kind of an interesting topic video. The idea of, can bad people, or I mean, I know that's kind of a basic title, but can people that have maybe immoral pasts or people that you may not agree with morally, can they make good art? Can they make good movies? There was one girl in particular that I had a back and forth with that had very strong opinions. She thinks that no one should support Polanski's films based on his past and a lot of the things that she disagrees with. And she believes that art absolutely can be ruined by the artist. And she even asked me, how can I consider myself a feminist if I support a rapist, her words. And I'm not saying that she's wrong. I mean, she's completely entitled to her opinion, absolutely, as am I. But it got me thinking about things. You know, the idea that maybe a certain person's morals don't align with my own, yet I really respect their work. Before I begin, first of all, I will say this. I absolutely do not condone anything that Roman Polanski has done in terms of the rape allegations and all of that. I don't agree with any of it. I do not condone it. It is wrong. I myself have gone through certain issues with sexual assault in the past. There's a point about that. I'm not disregarding other women's experiences because I understand. One of the reasons I love art is because in life, a lot of times, particularly with religion or politics, we try to, or just in human nature in general, we'd like to, categorize things as good and evil, black and white. To me, not everybody is all bad and not everybody is all good. And art is that special gray area. And no one ever said that art had to be moral or immoral. And that is the beauty of it. And I think that the reason why I am such a champion of expression, regardless of who you are, is that what you're doing is more, if it's good art, what you're doing is really studying humanity and all of its complexities. And most of the time that includes a lot of flaws. Humanity is not perfect by any means, as we know. And I think that art is one of those special forms of expression that really reflect the intimacy of that struggle, the confliction of what goes on, the human struggle. If I'm going to use an example, you could look at somebody like a famous, iconic character, Travis Bickle in Taxi Driver. He is an anti-hero. He does many immoral things, yet we can relate to his struggles because he is an outsider. He feels lost in the world. He doesn't fit in. Now, depending on who you are, you may not take drastic measures to the extent that Travis did in the film, but we understand the darkness inside of him and within ourselves because we are all human and we relate to each other. And to me, that's powerful because yes, he does immoral things. He kills people. He's a racist. He's very violently angry. But does that mean that we shouldn't watch the film because we disagree with his morals as a human being? And by that logic, we could sort of take an oppositional approach. Like I can look at somebody such as Michael Bay. He's a filmmaker that to me represents everything that I personally despise about mainstream entertainment from pretty much every angle. And I know I'm not alone in saying that. But let's say that he did something really incredible outside of filmmaking. Like say he found the cure for cancer and he saved the lives of millions and millions of people now and for future generations. And of course, yes, of course, I'd applaud anyone who would do something like that. If Michael Bay were the one to do that, obviously this is hypothetical, but again, by that logic, does that mean that if he is a good person or does something that I see as good, does that mean that I have to like his films? I am a flawed person. I've done many immoral things in my life. Roman Polanski is a flawed person, and he's done many immoral things in his life. And I'm sure that there are tons of artists out there that do a lot of things that society may think is bad. But maybe they just haven't been publicized yet. Maybe the media hasn't gotten a hold of certain stories, and maybe they never will. But does that excuse them? Just because you know of one person doing a crime or something, maybe somebody else has and you just don't know about it. So it's a whole ignorance is bliss thing. But does that make it okay? A lot of our actions may not necessarily reflect how we personally feel. And Taxi Driver is another perfect example of that. The idea of a walking contradiction, how you really feel and what you really want. A lot of times you do the opposite. And this isn't in every case, but this film that I'm talking about, Taxi Driver, it to me is a work of art that studies that idea. So in general, art is a study, or good art is a study of the human subconscious, all of its desires and its fears in such a way that makes it more accessible so that we can relate to it and perhaps question our own morals, perhaps question our own actions as individuals. I think that great artists, great filmmakers use the medium of film as a means of working out their own personal issues, their own personal struggles that they may have dealt with in the past. And I think, I mean, I don't know for sure, but in a sense, maybe you could say that about Roman Polanski. And that, of course, is just something that is kind of a speculation. But I think that Repulsion, which I just reviewed, is a great example of that. I get the idea that it wasn't conscious for Polanski because he's the kind of person that if you listen to him in interviews, he's very much about just kind of doing things, not thinking about them. He lets the audience do that, which I think is kind of great. But I think that the way that he writes female characters in the film reflects his ability to maybe try and understand them and come to terms with the idea of misogyny and sexuality through the female perspective. And I said this in my review. I think Carol, the main character in Repulsion, she is so interesting because she is both repelled yet intrigued by the idea of sex. And Polanski does not dismiss her as some object. He does not dismiss her as just some blonde damsel in distress. He explores her feelings in ways that show, again, the flaws of humanity and maybe the strengths of humanity. And I think that in a way, we're able to, through her perspective, come to terms with all of these ideas, these human impulses in both men and women. And it's interesting because I think that Polanski has written many wonderful female characters, and a lot of people may find that ironic, but you look at somebody like Rosemary and Rosemary's Baby, Carol in Repulsion, as I said, Evelyn in Chinatown. And if you want to be even more recent, I really enjoyed The Ghostwriter. I think that came out in 2010. Huge fan of that film. Ruth, I think, was an astounding character. Each of these characters are complex. They have their own strengths and they go through special arcs. They are damaged and they are flawed, and perhaps it's a mirror of Polanski's own feelings about himself and maybe his relationships with women in a very revealing way. And then on a completely different note, because Polanski is, I think, a very versatile filmmaker, you know, if you do your research, you know, I mean, he had a very, a difficult life. He was somebody who lived in Europe during the Holocaust era, and he had a pretty horrific childhood because of that. And I think that's why he was the perfect person to make a film like The Pianist. The Holocaust is just a subject matter that he understands better than most people. And so regardless of what he's done, outside of that, I don't think it changes the power and the impact of that film. The reason I bring up that film is because the girl that I was talking to said that she saw the film and that she really liked it, was really moved by it. But when she found out about Polanski's past, she couldn't watch the film anymore. She couldn't support it. But I think that film needed to be made, and I'm so glad that it was. And again, you can say this about so many people, and you can look at John Lennon. He's had kind of a shady past, especially with women and abuse that we found out later, yet he wrote songs about peace and love. But do you not listen to his work because of those things that he's done in his past, or same with Woody Allen controversy, Michael Jackson controversy, or Polanski's films? Of course, I have my opinions and you have the right to not want to support somebody. I know I'm not going to say you're a terrible person for doing that, but I'm a person that's pretty empathetic, and I personally choose to really look at an artist, regardless of their past or anything like that, and, kind of pick their brain, see what they're feeling and thinking about things through their art. Because as I said, on so many levels, we can relate to that. And rather than dismissing someone as good or bad, I really want to look at what makes them tick. And maybe I'll learn a little bit about myself through that. So yes, I will stand by the idea that no, I don't support what Polanski has done in his past in terms of what I just spoke about, but I will stand by my belief that I think he has influenced the medium of film in many positive ways, and I think that cinema fans would agree. I think that the world of cinema is better because he existed as a filmmaker. And those are really just my thoughts there. So thank you for listening. If you'd like to follow me on Twitter, the link is below. You can also like my Facebook page, the link below that. You can watch more videos here, and you can subscribe if you want to. Catch you next time.